Hi, Dr. Rudy Kachmann, and I have a guest with me today, Angelo Storch, and he's going to help me in this little presentation, which is about Rudy's war on diabetes. I mean, what am I really saying is that I see so many horrible complications from diabetes, about 30 of them, and we'll have a look at that. But I know what I feel so good about is that we can prevent it, stop it, and reverse it. But people in general, our hospitals, our doctors, pharmaceutical companies, our government are not doing it. So that's the reason I get in the presentation. Diabetes is a little more common in certain racial and ethnic groups, and I put together a little talk about that a little while ago. But today, let's get on the road. We have tremendous amount of type 2 diabetics in this nation. Let's tell the difference between type 1 and type 2 a little bit. Angelo, type 1 is where you don't make any insulin. Your pancreas, which produces the insulin, is totally dead. It used to be called juvenile diabetes because it was seen only in children, but we find out now that after the pancreas gets so sick and tired of secreting insulin, and type 2 diabetes is that the type 2 is becoming type 1. Also, 90% of the diabetes really is type 2 these days. And what is diabetes? Inability to get sugar into the cell, inability for the liver to properly make glucose. This is a definition of diabetes. Type 1 can occur the day you're born, actually, if the mother is not eating the right food and the pancreas, the genetic structure is destroyed by her bad health habits. You can be born with type 1. They need insulin the day you're born. That's rare. But what a lot of people don't realize, it's not just an autoimmune disease. People always thought, well, it's an attack by your own antibodies or attack by a virus, for example. Now we find out, and I don't think the information is really out there enough, that that eating the wrong food, for example, eating food with a lot of gluten and lectins in it, is that they can react and destroy your pancreas, and now you're type 1 diabetic. And with them, the insulin is low. So, and before they made insulin, which we started making around 1920 or so, that those kids would die. They just waste away because they couldn't make the insulin to store sugar into the cell to make energy. But now we find if there's a history of problems with gluten or lectins, gluten is a lectin, they are more likely to get diabetes. Celiac disease is related to that. That's an advanced gluten problem. And those kids really have a serious problem. Many of them get diabetes, but anybody can get it. Also, we find out that milk consumption can result in case in the protein in milk can decide to attack the pancreas and destroy your ability to make insulin too. Yeah, so giving cow's milk, and the reason being is that cow's milk is full of chemicals that for example, when the calf is born, they inject it with a growth hormone drug to make the infant cow grow very quickly, so it can produce more milk. It's in a cage, and then we spray chemicals and on top of it, pesticides, herbicides, all sorts of chemicals. And when the child drinks the milk, or we as adults even drink the milk. I used to drink the milk when I was a child, and I'd get acne all over my face and rashes and all sorts of things. I didn't realize it was a reaction to the chemicals in milk. Yeah, that happened to me. Girls wouldn't kiss me because I had acne. Yeah, that's true. Then, yeah, that is true. When you're a kid, that can be a problem. And so I now know not to drink cow's milk because of the chemicals in it. But that can cause type 1 diabetes where you don't make insulin, and then you have to take insulin shots for it all the time, okay? And some even have insulin pumps. I think there is pumps are an advantage, but I would say this. I saw a kid recently at a breakfast place, and the waitress said, "Yes, my son, he's a type 1 diabetic, and he was way overweight, and the reason is that he was eating anything he wants to. He'd have a donut, and he'd give himself a whole bunch of insulin. Insulin is a fat hormone. When the sugar gets pulled in the cell goes like that. So if you're a type 1 diabetic who needs to take insulin, you're not careful what you eat, or you're using a pump. Oh, I'm going to eat a very bad sugary thing. I'm going to have a dozen donuts, and then you just inject more insulin. You may live a little bit longer than if you didn't have it, but you will die in your 60s and 50s and not live to be 100, because insulin is a fat hormone. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. The company that makes it don't know that, and they charge all these excessive prices. So type 1 diabetes is definitely a problem. But if you eat the right type of food, you will, like good fats and not sugary foods, then you will not be stuffing your cells full of sugar. Yeah. So a person who has type 1 diabetes, who only takes 10 or 20 units and they're eating the right food, they can live to be 100. I know of a doctor that did that. Then again, I know of other ones that died young, although they had insulin. So the insulin is not the total answer. Insulin stiffens your arteries, causes dementia, causes immune problems, increased rates of cancer. It can do a lot of things to you. So just to celebrate because of insulin, it's a problem. Then type 2 diabetes is where, because insulin is pushing sugar into the cells, so the cells are getting big, and yet you're getting the complications of being overweight. In type 2 diabetes, if you were to screen people, you find an elevated blood sugar, but you would also find an elevated serum insulin. And remember, insulin does a lot of other things to you, so that's not necessarily good. And as you get a day older, you take more insulin and constantly a little bit more because your cells are getting tired of having so much insulin in their body. So the receptors die out. You need more insulin. As you're getting older, more insulin, more insulin, more insulin. Eventually your pancreas may be dead. Now you're type 1 diabetic. The trouble is insulin has a lot of other effects on your body and helps cause these 30, 40 diseases. Dementia, for example, is related to insulin because the enzyme, insulin degrading enzyme, IDE enzyme, after a while wears down because you're presenting so much sugar to the brain. And the IDE enzyme is also used to detoxify amyloid and neurofibrillary tangles in the brain. So a lot of dementia is related to diabetes. Most dementia is caused by diabetes. So it's not all Alzheimer's disease. There is a genetic component. There is an incidence of Alzheimer's disease, but it's not common. Most of what we're seeing is memory loss from diabetes. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah. And most of kidney disease is from diabetes, especially twice the number in the black population. Because they have a higher rate of the diabetes, higher rate of kidney disease. So to control your diabetes, to stop it, prevent, reverse it, is critical. I tell you, a book I encourage you to read is The Diabetes Code by Jason Fung. I'm going to hold that up for you here, right here. He is from Canada, and F-U-N-G. He was a renal doctor, but he noticed most of the people he was seeing were diabetic. So he decided to become a diabetic doctor. Now he's world famous. You can see his YouTube shows. Just go YouTube Jason Fung. He puts a new show on there at least once a week. And learn to listen to him if you're diabetic and you want to get rid of the disease or prevent the disease. The most wonderful thing I read in there recently was that he's had a few people who had type 2 diabetes 30 or 40 years. And the reason that people have it is they're overweight. Not all of them are. But the fat is deposited in their pancreas and interferes with the secretion of insulin. It also fills the liver, so the liver can detoxify things proper. And he found if you can get people to eat the right way, which I'll teach you shortly, the fat will first leave the pancreas and the liver, and then the rest of the body, that the pancreas will wake up and secrete insulin again. Yes, you can have had diabetes for 30 or 40 years, been a type 2 diabetic, and you may start secreting insulin again. Isn't that fascinating? It's right in that book, and he's done studies to support that. So that's a great book. And what he says on his cover: prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes naturally, which is by proper eating, picking the right food, say 50-70% good fats. You got to learn what good fats are. 20% protein. You don't want to eat too much protein. Some protein's fine. It could be from vegetables. I'm not against having some from organic meat, for example. Your body needs a certain amount of protein per day. Your muscle cells will break down into amino acids, and 80% of the protein that is used to build up cartilage and bones in your body and muscles, for example, is recycled. 80%. 20% is just what you take in. If you take in too much protein, you eat steak 7 days a week, and is that the body will convert it to sugar. So when you see these bodybuilders taking steroids and extra protein and nothing but a meat diet, they're just getting fat. Your body will only assemble a certain amount of amino acids to build proteins, and then converts it to sugar and make your diabetes worse. So a lot of these bodybuilders get blood tested. You never know. You never know. Remember, I said the secret is to get serum insulins starting at age 2 or 3. Very young age. Pediatricians today, family doctors check children blood sugar starting at age 10 or 11. Mistake, because the biggest increase in obesity rate is in the 2 to 6-year-olds. Most doctors would not be familiar with that. You'd have to do your own reading, read Jason Fong's book, or look at my YouTube, or whatever. A lot of this was originally put together by Joseph Kraft, K-R-A-F-T. He did the research back in 1980s and 90s and published this book in 2006. This, to me, is the Bible of diabetes prevention. He did autopsies on over 1,000 people. Then he did studies with other doctors, 14,000 people, and they developed a number of curves. And this book you can read in 2 or 3 nights, a doctor maybe one night. Beautiful explanations. And this should be absolute requirement for every medical student, every physician assistant, nurses, diabetic educators. But I speak to them, never even heard of the guy. You can see him on YouTube, Joseph Kraft, K-R-A-F-T, and what he says in there, right on the YouTube, he's discussing it with an obesity doctor, discussing diabetes. Now he's 92 years old, he's died since. He says, I will be looking down on you for a long time before the medical community and industry and hospitals change to prevent reverse diabetes. He said that. It's absolutely true. So when I wrote a book on it, that's the reason I declared war on diabetes. Well, I mean, people have it. Have your diabetes. We don't care. That's how we make money. That's occurring all the time. So I began my book. I declared war because nobody's doing a darn thing about it. But I am not letting you have the disease and get your legs amputated and die and have dementia from something that's preventable. That's me, Angela. And I will never change till I can't talk anymore.
That's good. Yeah.
That's the way I am. So in my preface of my book, I was going to read you this. Dr. Joseph Kraft is watching us from above. Remember he said so. I've watched Dr. Kraft's YouTube presentation many times, and I encourage you to do the same. 92 years old, and I'm sure he's watching this show today, because we need to change. This is easily preventable and stoppable. An excellent book on how to really get the job done. I have many books on that, okay? But one of my favorites is Simply Keto by Susan Ryan. I encourage you, if you have this disease, you follow this book for 4 or 6 weeks, you won't have diabetes anymore. 90% of the time. Nothing's 100. Nothing's 100. And she has beautiful recipes in there. The amount of fats, the amount of protein, the amount of sugar. Every recipe has that written on it. The breakfast, lunch, dinners. She, in essence, describes three meals a day. In the beginning, she has a beautiful explanation of what good fats are and bad fats, and because you got to know that. And she has a food pyramid. It's about 50-70% good fats, 20% protein, and the rest of vegetables and fruit. Vegetables and fruit, 80% of the time, may make you better, but it will not cure you as easily or as quickly or as permanently as a Simply Keto book. There are many books on ketones, but I highly recommend hers. Many patients who no longer have diabetes. Matter of fact, I had breakfast at a restaurant in town, breakfast Spiros. They have great choice in there. You eat bad food too, but a great choice in there. I'm paying my bill. Two guys walk in, say, Rudy, let's pay. I want to pay for your bill. I said, it's already paid. And they both back away, and I couldn't believe it. One that lost 50 pounds, one that lost 20. And then the gentleman that lost 50 was trying to follow the hostess to their table. It was a crowded place. So he's backing off, and he puts his arm in the air. He says, it's all about fasting, Rudy. It's all about fasting. And I said, who taught you that? He said, you did. You handed a book to my friend. And he lost 20 pounds and then handed me in the book. If you want to quickly get healthy, that's a great way. And what I teach is not missing days or weeks or months. You know, it's in history. Fasting is even in the Bible. What I'm talking about, time-regulated eating, 16-8. 16 hours you don't eat, 8 hours you eat. And quickly your body will cleanse itself. What you have done by creating this breakfast 16 hours is that your body is undergoing autophagia. It's cleansing itself. It's repairing good and bad cells and building new cells. And your body is getting healed. And then the first meal, let's say what I do, 10, 11, or 12, and try to make that a healthier one by good proteins, avoid sugary products, guacamole, a good fat, for example, or some soups that are good fats. And then eat the other meal around 6 o'clock or so. Time fasting itself, time regulated eating itself might cure you of your diabetes. I've seen it. I've read about it. It's been done. That's what I do, 135 pounds. And you can have coffee and water in that period when you're fasting. And you will not have much appetite to eat in the morning. You don't need breakfast. That's something we invented in the early 1900s. And that was not something that goes back hundreds of years. Nature didn't allow it. There wasn't any food available. What happens is, in the fasting time, around 5 in the morning, a circadian rhythm wakes you up, and the light wakes you up a little bit, and the body secretes steroids from the adrenal glands, growth hormone from the pituitary and hypothalamus, and glucagon from the pancreas. That's the opposite to insulin. Gets secreted, and that keeps your blood sugar very even level. And when your blood sugar is even, you're not hungry. You only get hungry when the blood sugar dips. And you don't even feel like eating. Have some coffee or some water. Then eat your first meal around noon. Try to make that a healthy meal. But remember what I said. It's not critical that it be healthy. People can eat moderately healthy meals at noon and at 6, and you may get rid of all chronic disease. Your HbA1c returns to normal. That's wonderful. It makes it easy. So I'd suggest at least, you're a bit overweight and you get diabetes, you're trying to avoid it, you've had a serum insulin test, and I get diabetes. Oh, you got a pot belly, you probably get diabetes. You can get rid of it probably a month, to be honest with you, some quicker. So keep track of your blood sugars, know what the symptoms are of the blood sugar dropping. You're dizzy, you're urinating more frequently, you're tired, your blood sugar could be lower. I'm not worried about it going higher, but I'm worried about it getting lower. If you're on medication, talk to your providers, because if you're shooting yourself full of insulin, now you're eating healthy, the blood sugar may quickly go down and it could get serious. But what I highly recommend is that if you're on insulin, and some even without insulin, get one of these meters that you can put a patch on here and with your iPhone, and you can check your blood sugar anytime. The patch is there. And what it is that tiny little patch, a needle penetrated under the skin. You don't even feel it as you put it on. I've done it myself, just to see. And you can measure your blood sugar real easy because you're not feeling it right. You can just go like that and say, oh, it's 115, it's fine. Or if the type of food that you're eating, if you can keep your blood sugars 140 and under and not harm your organs, they have now found out that if your blood sugar at 2 hours is more than 140, you're getting organ damage. You may not be aware of it, you may not even see it yet, but it's happening. So these glucose meters, Lifestyle Libre is another one. And it can be used on people over age 18. The nice one about the other one, the G6, Dexcom G6, is it can start it using at age 2. Yeah. And it keeps computer track of your blood sugars. You can look at the graphs. It's really an excellent way. I know of a minister, an adult, and he himself had a Lifestyle Libre, and I noticed I take him out to dinner. He's ate something and he checked the blood sugar. Mm-hmm. That's accountability. You know what I mean? Remember I said, if it's not over 140 or some insulin's over 40 after eating, it's much safer for you. Isn't that really fascinating stuff I'm telling you?
That is awesome. That really is.
Yeah.
It's awesome to be able to have the knowledge.
Yes.
To determine that, such as when you talk about the first tier.
Yeah.
And now you're going to another tier.
Yes.
What happens if you miss the first tier? Are you?
Is it affecting you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your blood sugar's 250. And what's interesting about these medications, I find like metformin, which is something they hand to people quickly, a lot of the time. But I found metformin only lowers the blood sugar about 50 points. It's right in these books. And it's a drug they give to everybody. It has a lot of side effects too. And people need to know that, and that's well written up in the book, Goodbye Pills and Needles by Tom Jelinek. He talks it. And it's also well written up in a book, Glucose 101 by Susan Jewell, Juhl. She describes it very well too. And insulin stuffs sugar into the cell, makes the cell expand, and you get fatter. And after a while, you need more insulin, more insulin. So these drugs are not what they're hyped up to be. I want you to get rid of diabetes.
Yes.
Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Don't accept it. The medical community wants to hand you a pill and a shot. And diabetes clinics are not devoted to reversing the diabetes. Then you don't get those 30 diseases, and it can be done 90% of the time in about 4 to 8 weeks. Please join Rudy's War on Diabetes.
Yes, yes.
You must say, I don't apologize for being so fortunate, because we're talking about preventing 30 diseases, amputations, blindness, heart attacks, death, liver disease, renal disease, preventing it. And the opportunity is there. I hope you join our team, and we're in the process of designing even a touch technology machine to teach you. And Angelo has promised that he will get this done for me. Join our team. We love you. See you next time.